All right, hi there, everyone. Welcome to Believe in Bills. Adam Benigni of WGRZ TV, Sports Talk Live, Buffalo, Sal Maiorana, Rochester Democrat, and Chronicle from the Fieldhouse in Orchard Park. Week one, regular season mode. Sal, you don't have, it's not much of a shifting of the gears for you to get there, is it?
No, I mean, I'm glad we're finally here, but yeah, we still are technically in the same mode we've been at, and we don't have a game to talk about yet. Things are definitely moving in the right direction, though, particularly for the Bills on the injury front. Let's face it, it was a kind of a chaotic summer for the Bills. Mm-hmm. That was a problematic injury list that they dealt with throughout training camp and in the preseason, and things have sort of started to normalize a little bit here. We're still kind of unsure on a few things because Sean McDermott wasn't exactly forthcoming with information this afternoon, but we can go through it here and get people caught up on what I learned out here at the stadium today.
Yeah, all right, so let's start with the secondary, right? And Tre'Davious White, that's the big question. And you see Christian Benford on there with a lower leg, that obviously raises your eyebrows as well, although he did practice, and I think, it's my understanding, pretty much everyone practiced in some capacity with the exception of White, and we still don't know his status for a game. Is that right? Take us through it.
Yeah, I mean, it's trending in the direction of him not playing, Tre'Davious White not playing Sunday. He hasn't practiced for, it's going on 2 weeks now, and I don't see that happening. They haven't specified what kind of lower leg. It's like we're in hockey now with this lower leg injury stuff. We don't know if it's ankle, knee, foot, something. So, but I don't think he's going to play. Christian Benford, I think, will play. You can just tell by his demeanor. I think that whatever injury he has to his lower leg, they're just being very cautious. He did, what we could see today in practice, the individual stuff. He was doing that. We have no idea once they went in the team because we can't watch. But the feeling is, I think, that he'll be able to go. So if you're not playing Tre'Davious White, you've got to figure – I would think Jamarcus Ingram would get the start. I can't imagine Dorian Strong, the rookie, will start over Ingram, but he's your depth, and they might have to elevate Dane Jackson from the practice squad just to make sure they're covered on the boundary. So not a great situation, Adam, to go into a first game against an offense like the Ravens with a secondary that's already banged up at two key positions.
Right. And as for the rest, I mean, a good number of players practicing, and I have not seen the injury report as we, record this, so that should be noted.
Yeah,
but, this is ground that's been covered, I think, but every indication Shakir's good to go, right?
Yeah, he was out there today, looked fine. He talked to guys. I wasn't over there, but I saw him talking to a few reporters. So if he was hurt and not playing, he wouldn't be talking to anybody. So I think he's fine. He'll be good to go. The other one that we raised a question with McDermott on was Tyler Bass, because last week, all of a sudden the Bills bring in three kickers. They weren't named Caden Davis, by the way, who was here all summer, for tryouts. And you immediately started thinking, well, Tyler Bass, there's something going on there. And maybe they're concerned. I asked McDermott directly, you didn't sign any of these kickers as far as we know. And he said, no. And I said, is that an indication that Bass is okay? And he said, he's good to go for now. So we'll see. He made 4 kicks, right? I think he made 3 field goals, maybe 5 kicks in that game. But he missed the 26-yarder. And it was interesting. They said in that game they were capping him at 48 yards. So they didn't want to have him extend himself. But I got to believe, Adam, that those restrictions are off, because you're not going to go into a game against the Ravens in week one without a kicker who can't kick past 48 yards. So I got to believe he's ready to go. We'll see.
Yeah, but to see him still affected, pelvic soreness or whatever, I mean,
it's a weird injury.
It's a weird injury, and neither one of us is a doctor or an orthopedist, right? But you don't want to get in. But it seems, kind of a nagging type thing, right? And as you look at, a game like this and some others, it goes without saying that's a potential factor.
Yeah, I mean, he kicked off fine, too. I thought he did a good job in that game on kickoffs. You can't kick the ball in the end zone anymore because it's a touchback to the 35. He did a nice job of placing the ball between the 10 and the goal line. So everything looked fine to me. I mean, kickers are going to miss kicks. He happened to just push the one the one short one to the right. But, man, when they bring in 3 kickers for tryouts, that was a big red flag. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes this week.
All right, so the Ravens are dealing with some injuries as well, notably tight end Isaiah Likely, right, and cornerback Jaire Alexander. You don't really necessarily need to get into detail on that, but it's far from perfection on either sideline at this point.
Yeah, Likely is a really good player for them, but they also have Mark Andrews, Adam, and he's, I know last year was a bit of a down year for him. Well, a down year was still 55 catches and a team high 11 touchdowns. So, he's still a pretty good player. I know he had a rough game here in the playoff game. That was one that he'll want to forget for the rest of his life if he can. But you go from Isaiah Likely to Mark Andrews, I think you're going to be fine. And then Jaire Alexander, that's a player they signed in free agency, and he hasn't practiced, I think, since August 9th. So it would seem like, it's very similar to like Trey White. I don't think he's going to be able to go. So they've got some pretty good depth there at corner, though. They got better depth at corner than the Bills do. So I think they'll be able to survive that injury too.
Yeah, and both of these teams address the defensive side in the offseason. That's more than worth noting because, you're naturally going to make a comparison to the divisional playoff game, the Bills' 27-25 win. And we'll get to that. But, the national headline, right, what NBC and everyone else are pushing is, once again, the MVP. Here comes the MVP debate again. Josh Allen, the reigning MVP, Lamar Jackson, there was a huge argument that he should have been. FanDuel, by the way, Allen and Jackson plus 250 to combine for 550 plus passing yards. I see them being able to do that. But again, openers are fluky and all of those things. We'll get to the matchup, but the big thing with Allen and Jackson is the championship pedigree or lack thereof, right? Yeah. And in sports, when you measure the great ones, that's at the top of the conversation. How much stock do you put into that argument with reference to these two?
Hey, look, it's part of being a superstar quarterback. And, these guys are making huge, huge amounts of money. They're the faces of their respective franchises. They've each been in the league 7 years. They've each gone to the playoffs 6 times, and neither one of them has gone to a Super Bowl yet. Now, there's a big reason for that. It's that Patrick Mahomes guy in Kansas City being coached by Andy Reid with a great team around them. The Chiefs have been a bear. The Chiefs have been what the Bills were in the early 90s. No team in the AFC was able to get past the Bills, and it's the same thing right now with the Chiefs. So Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen both have that carrot dangling over their heads. Josh has been to 2 AFC championship games. Jackson only 1. And you can definitely make the case that Lamar Jackson's postseason career has fallen far short of Josh Allen's career in the postseason. Josh has played better in playoff games than Jackson. Jackson has some losses that are really kind of tough to explain in the postseason. And quite frankly, Adam, last year here might have been one of those games. Oh. They outplayed the Bills for a good chunk of that game. But Lamar made 2 turnovers in the first half, and then obviously Andrews had that huge fumble in the fourth quarter. Then Lamar takes him right downfield, and Andrews drops the 2-pointer. So that was one of those head-scratching losses for the Ravens. By all rights, they should have won that game. If you really look at it closely, how it played out, they probably should have won, and they didn't. So that's a check mark in the bad box for Lamar Jackson.
Oh, that's a huge motivating factor, obviously, for them. Yeah. And you've heard that as part of the narrative out of Baltimore with them coming in here for this. They outgained the Bills 416 to 273 in that game.
Yeah. It all came down to those turnovers. The Bills jumped out to a 21-10 lead, helped by the 2 turnovers. That was a huge part of it. And then Baltimore making mistakes in the fourth quarter, which is kind of uncharacteristic for that team. So I think the Bills recognize that. Now, I talked to a few guys today in the locker room, and they all said, look, last year's last year. These are 2 different teams. It's a new season. Forget about it. There's no carryover to that game. But you talk to the Ravens, which I didn't do, but I saw some of the quotes, and they're talking about it. Like they're happy they're coming to Buffalo for week 1. This is a team that knocked them out of the playoffs. A couple guys said it the other day. They're perfectly good with coming here, and they would like to exact a little revenge on the Bills. So that makes it for a very juicy matchup, which, is why it's in this Sunday night window. The NFL knows what it's doing, Adam, and that's why that game is where it is this week on the schedule.
No, it knows exactly what it's doing. So you have this marquee matchup on Sunday night, Channel 2 and NBC in the Buffalo market. So let's get to that a little bit. I mean, I have another question for you later. I'm going to switch topics, but because you raised the point you did, how much carryover is there? I mentioned both teams addressed defenses in the offseason, where the offense is largely remaining intact anyway, right? But there are certain characteristics to this matchup. You know, the run games, for example. James Cook had a big game in that divisional playoff, 147 yards. So does this matchup maybe defy the argument that there isn't? I mean, I understand that emotionally, once the ball's in the air, you know, you're kind of in the moment and focused on the game. But the structure of these teams and how they're built and what's made them successful, I don't know that the dynamic of the matchup has a lot of change to it, right?
No, it really doesn't. I mean, the Ravens, you know, there was talk in their media in the offseason that, you know, that's a team, because they've had so many good players through the year, when their guys go to free agency, they leave. They get signed to big deals elsewhere, but they didn't have the same type of turnover this year. They kind of stayed pretty much intact, you know, especially on the offensive side. And then they made some nice additions on defense in the draft. I mean, you know, Malachi Starks was a player, he's a safety, was a player that was mocked to the Bills in many mock drafts. It seemed like a perfect fit for Buffalo because we just don't know what Cole Bishop's going to be. And there, you know, Taylor Rapp is a good player, but, you know, Malachi Starks looks like he could be a real stud. They picked him first. They drafted Mike Green, who was the #1 sacker in college football last year. I talked to Spencer Brown today to see if he watched any tape. And he said, you know, he hasn't seen much beyond preseason, but he knows that kid is a hell of a pass rusher. So you add him to a group that already rushed the passer pretty well. That Baltimore defense is going to be tough. You know, last year, Adam, they were the worst pass defense in the NFL halfway through the season. They were a disaster. 294 yards a game through 9 weeks. They made a few tweaks. They benched a couple guys. They moved Kyle Hamilton back full-time to safety. And from the midway point on, they were as good as any team in the league. And if you recall, Josh Allen threw for 127 in that game. So I think we're going to see that version of this Baltimore defense and maybe even a little bit of a better version of that defense come Sunday night.
Right. The question is, you know, on the other side of the ball, how well equipped is Buffalo in terms of the secondary to deal with Jackson and this particular receiving core, right? Yeah. I mean, you look at the names, they jump off the depth chart, right? So with all the questions we have, I mean, I do think between what's happening at corner and then what we've talked about at great length at the safety position, the Bills are vulnerable back there. Oh, and absolutely. The Ravens are going to be the first team to test them. Every offensive coordinator is going to have that, you know, circled and targeted because I do think this is arguably the best roster they've assembled under Bean and McDermott, but that's kind of the caveat, right? The secondary. That could be an undoing in a very significant way.
This is, to me, this is the worst possible matchup the Bills could have drawn for opening night, is this Baltimore offense. There isn't a more balanced offensive team in the league. And when I say balanced, I mean dynamically balanced, right? You had the #1 rushing team in the NFL last year with Derrick Henry, 1,900 yards. Lamar had over 900. They were, I think it was 188 per game. That's unbelievable. But then you turned it around on offense, and he had his best season as a quarterback, 4,100 yards, 41 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. There isn't a team in the NFL, Adam, that can play offense with that type of great balance than the Ravens. And they're coming into this game going against a Buffalo defense that we've already talked about, has, I think, multiple questions. Look at the defensive line. You start right there. They look pretty good on the edge with Bosa and Rousseau. And then Oliver and Daquan Jones, okay, that's fine, but you know we're going to rotate D tackles. And what do the Bills have right now? They got 2 rookies. De'Aaron Walker and TJ Sanders are probably going to be active and part of this rotation. Dwayne Carter's out for the season. He was #5 anyways. And, unless the Bills, call up Jordan Phillips, I mean, it's very possible that he'll get put on the 53-man roster and just take Dwayne Carter's spot. He might get into the game. He might actually be active on Sunday, but that's a concern in the middle of the line for the Bills. Linebacker, they're fine. And then we've already talked about the secondary. This is a team that has Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, DeAndre Hopkins, Mark Andrews. Justice Hill is terrific as a third down back. He's their Ty Johnson. Very, very tough matchup for this Buffalo defense.
Yeah, no question about it. Bill's favored by 1.5, but that essentially makes it a pick'em game. And so as we sort of wrap this up, at least for the Wednesday edition here, there's an argument, and I know you have strong feelings about this, as do I, in sectors of the fan base, and some of it emanated from of all things, the preseason loss in Chicago, right? But the suggestion is this Super Bowl or bust for McDermott?
Yeah.
And all of that. I mean, I don't necessarily see, I understand sort of the window that coaches get when you have a talented quarterback like they do and have had the success they've had. And I know 13 seconds lingers for a lot of people, but he's had so much success. I think they've done a good job of keeping the window open and remaining competitive. I mean, the 5 straight division titles speaks to that. They obviously have to get over the top, but I don't feel like, I just can't bring myself to really meaningfully take part in that argument and see Terry Pegula, if they fall short of the Super Bowl, firing Sean McDermott.
No, that's crazy talk. And I've been saying this for the last few years. I mean, we've really been hearing that since 13 seconds, right? I mean, we've been hearing this as far back as then. People wanted to fire McDermott that night for what happened in that game, which is just crazy to me. They've gone on since then. Like you said, now it's 5 straight division titles. They've been in the playoffs 7 out of 8 years. I know they haven't taken that final step, not only, 2 steps. First, getting to the Super Bowl and then obviously winning one. I know they haven't done it. Guess what? A lot of teams haven't done it. A lot of teams. Since Josh Allen has been in the league, you can check me on this. I'm not positive. I think I got it right. The Eagles have won 2 and the Chiefs have won 3. So he's been in the league 7 years. 2 teams have won 5 of the Super Bowls. There's a lot of teams, Adam, that leave the end of the year disappointed. A lot of teams in this league. Buffalo happens to be one of them. And for people to start complaining about Sean McDermott and how he can't win the big one, it's just crazy talk to me. This is a hard league. It's a hard league. And they just happen to be in the league at the same time as Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid over there in Kansas City. Like I said earlier in the show, this is the same way AFC teams felt back in the early 90s when the Bills were the pinnacle and nobody could get past them. How many teams tried, right? The Raiders tried 1 year. Denver tried 1 year. Miami tried 1 year. The Chiefs in the last year. 4 different teams had a crack in the championship game, couldn't get past the Bills. That's how it is right now with the Chiefs standing in the way of everybody in the conference. This is what happens. So get over it. The guy has done I think he's done a tremendous job getting this franchise back to relevancy. And in Josh Allen, who's 29 years old now, just starting to enter that real prime of his career, you want to get this done. But the window is wide open. There's still, I think it's the Chiefs, Ravens, and Bills, no order there, no particular order, are the cream of the crop in the AFC. And it's going to come down to probably injuries, a little bit of good fortune, and, just standing up tall at the very end. That's the team that's going to go to the Super Bowl. And it could be any one of those 3. Hell, it could be the Bengals for all we know, right? I mean, it isn't just those 3 teams. Tough league, man. Tough league to win.
I mean, the Bengals are a team that's done it, gotten to the Super Bowl anyway.
Yeah.
Not won it, obviously. But gone into Arrowhead and won in the process of that. And Joe Burrow, when you talk about elite quarterbacks, he's right there on that list.
Absolutely.
He's in that top 3 or 4, at least, in the league. So you're right. But I do agree with you that you've got 2 of the 3 really top-end, upper-tier echelon teams in this opener, Bills and Ravens, Sunday night in Orchard Park. All right, that's going to do it for Believe in Bills, presented by FanDuel. For Sal Maiorana of the Rochester Democrat and Chronicle, who is at team headquarters in Orchard Park, I'm Adam Benigni of WGRZ TV. Thanks for being with us here on the show.